This week on the Indie Author Showcase, we talk about Wondercon. How did it go? Have you heard about the Shy Girl controversy? And for our showcase, the light at the end. Let's start the show. Welcome to the Indie Author Showcase, the podcast by indie authors for indie authors. I am your host, multi-award-winning author Chad Robert Morgan, and let's get started. One thing you might have noticed, we did something a little bit different. We started with a cold open. Why did I do this? Because there's another YouTuber that I watch, Bob Chapman. He started adding cold opens to his shows, and he said, why am I doing it? Because the algorithm likes it. So, will this help get me views? No idea, but we'll give it a shot. Let me know, do you like the cold open? We can keep doing it. I'll keep doing it until I hear otherwise. But let me know what you think. So let's start by talking about WonderCon. Now, there was no podcast last week because we were at WonderCon. I did actually try something. I had a live stream with Cynthia Diamond all set up. We actually went through the whole interview. It was a great interview. And it didn't work. Like, nothing went out of the computer. So I need to go through my steps. I think I know the button I didn't click. I had everything set up with OBS, was linked to YouTube, but I think YouTube never broadcast the live stream. I think that was my error. So we're going to try to get Cynthia Diamond back. She's totally game. She understood it was an experiment. She was very cool about the whole thing. So we will definitely get her back to get that interview started. It was really a cool interview. I'm sorry none of you all got to see it. But we'll redo it. Hopefully next week. I'm hoping. So we'll get that worked out. WonderCon itself was kind of slow. Now, I don't blame the event organizers for this. I blame the state of the economy. I mean, here in California, while we were at WonderCon, gas was hitting $6 a gallon. Gas is always more expensive here in California than it is anywhere else. I remember driving to Miami for the Miami Book Fair and going through Louisiana and Arkansas and just seeing gas prices that were just like from 20 years ago and taking pictures like, honey, look at how cheap the gas is out here. This is amazing. We're always screwed with gas prices here in California. Partly because I think there's like a 61 cent per gallon gas tax. And we also have higher emission standards, so the oil companies go, well, that means we have to make special blends, and that costs more money. And even though we have refineries here in California. In fact, California is the third largest oil-producing state in the nation. It goes, I believe it's Texas, Alaska, then us, right? So California is producing more oil than most of the country, and yet we're royally screwed on gas prices. With that said, sorry, I'm getting kind of on a rant on this thing, but just to let you know, because people out of state don't get this, really. I mean, when you're in Texas and you're like $4 a gallon. Rumor had it there was a gas station in LA that was up to $9. Where I'm at here in Orange County, it was easily passing $6 a gallon. If you're lucky, you found it just under $6 a gallon. You got it at like $5.60 or something like that. So yeah, it was expensive. And on top of, inflation creeping back up, on top of food prices being more, because again, when you don't have gas, everything becomes more expensive. Because you can't transport anything, right? The farmer doesn't have gas for his tractor, or that becomes more expensive, so he has to charge more. The gas to haul the crop to the store becomes more expensive. I mean, it snowballs. So everything becomes more expensive. And that's just the economy we're at today. So as a convention, WonderCon was struggling, and I am blaming the current state of the economy on it. I know I'm not blaming the event organizers. But I was checking my receipts, and I made about half of what I did last year. And on top of that, they're increasing the fees for the table fees. I believe I've already signed up for next year. I haven't paid for it yet, so I can bow out if I change my mind. But it was 400. I believe last year it was 350. Right? Creep IE has increased their prices as well. So I mean, everything is getting more expensive. So I I did talk to a lot of indie authors. Um, Being slow, I got to talk to more authors than I usually do. And half of these people I've already talked to before and showcased on the podcast. That's what's great about WonderCon is because there's this huge small press area. Until recently, I thought that was the place. LA Comic Con, I found out, was even bigger for indie authors. So I'm excited for that. But WonderCon has always been a great place for indie authors to get out there and meet the public. And there's a lot of people that are like, I don't know if I'm going to do it next year. Right? I mean, even if they made their table fees, they're still spending a weekend basically breaking even. And that's not even breaking even, because if you think about, you're selling $300 worth of books, or say $400 worth of books to pay for the table, you're actually $200 in the hole, because you paid for the table, but you used up $200 worth of books, depending on how you price it, how you price your book. It could be $150 worth of books. I don't know, whatever your price point is. But generally speaking, whatever it costs me, I double it. Right? My paperbacks, for example, cost me roughly $5 per book to get it to me. Each book is a little different, but I just sort of rounded up to 5. This one might be 510. This one might be 480. Whatever. I just round it to 5. Make the math easy, and then I just double it and sell it at 10. Some people would triple it, sell it for 15. Again, I'm not sure which is the better strategy. I like to keep my price as low as possible because my goal is to get my book out there, to make customers, to have happy fans, build up a fan base, and when I do the conventions, my goal is to break even so I can do it next year, right? I'm not really looking to make a profit. I have a day job that pays pretty well. And I'm driving Uber on the side to compensate for the pretty well part. But point is if I had to do it for the money, I'd really be hurting. But that's not really my goal, right? My goal is to break even, so I can keep doing this perpetually, right? As long as WonderCon breaks even, I can take that money and do it again next year, and just keep going and going and going as long as I'm breaking even. That's all I want to do. But yeah, it was really slow. Again, I'm not blaming the event organizers. I'm blaming the economy. So I'm a little bit nervous about Monsterpalooza coming up, because that's way more expensive than WonderCon. But Monsterpalooza has proven so far to be recession-proof. Last year, we did very well at Monsterpalooza and Son of Monsterpalooza, and the economy was already kind of putting a squeeze on people, right? That's when all the tariffs were coming out and everything like that, and everything was becoming more expensive. So, but I talked to the show organizer, and they said, yeah, we are seeing not a drop in ticket sales, but a shift. People were buying less 3-day passes and 2-day passes, and we're buying more single-day passes. So, from a vendor standpoint, I was seeing the crowds, and I was very happy. But the event organizers did say, yeah, we are seeing a drop in sales. Or maybe not a drop, but a shift from more expensive premium tickets to cheaper tickets. But WonderCon Monsterpalooza does also have that whole new area where it's just all tables, so a lot of people can get in there at a less expensive price. So yeah, fingers crossed, because I'm a little nervous. And again, it's nothing against the convention organizers. It's just I'm always worried about the state of the economy because as an author, I'm relying on people having disposable income, right? If it's like a really good book versus milk, milk's probably going to win, right? We, as an author, we need people to have a little bit of, I mean, and books aren't expensive, right? I mean, my paperbacks are $10 a piece. They're not that expensive, but $10 is a couple gallons of gas these days. It's not even 2 gallons of gas. So, people have priorities. I understand that. So yeah, the economy is hurting us as indie authors. At least it definitely was at WonderCon. Let me put it that way. So, yep. Did see some nice panels. There was a really nice panel on sci-fi horror that I got to sit on. My booth neighbor Ace, he was there with an old friend of the show, Mike Robinson. You might remember him, winner Book of the Year last year. He had a friend that was on the panel, and so I went with him. There was another panel about spicy reads that I wanted to send in, but the other panel went long, and then I couldn't find the other panel, so I missed it. I'm really sorry I missed that one. I wanted to see that one as well. But the horror sci-fi one was a little bit more up my alley anyway, so did want to try to hit both. But there were some really cool panels out there, like how to build your own droid, 3D printing for cosplay. I mean, there were some really cool panels there, and some that were, as an author, spoke to me on a professional level. So again, WonderCon, I think is great. It's a fantastic place for indie authors, but like everything else, things are getting more expensive, and it's getting harder and harder to get the crowds in. So we'll see how that trend continues in the future as we move on to WonderCon, and then after that, Creep IE Aftermath. I did have another topic planned for today, but I kind of fell into this whole story about Shy Girl. Now, if you don't know what this is, an independent author, Mia Ballard, wrote this book, Shy Girl. This is about a girl that is desperate for money. She basically hooks up with a sugar daddy, and sugar daddy starts to basically gets off treating her like a dog. And over the course of the book, I guess she starts becoming a dog, either metaphysically or in her head, or maybe even actually physically. It's a little vague. I think it's supposed to be vague on purpose. I think it's up to reader interpretation from what I understand. I have not read the book myself, but just based on what I'm reading. So what happened was this book got a lot of traction. A lot of people were into this book. So it got picked up by Hachette Publishing. So this woman was starting to live the dream here. She was an indie author that sold a book online, just like the rest of us indie authors are, and traditional press noticed it, picked it up, was already selling it in the UK, and was going to sell it here in America when the controversy hit. Apparently, there was a New York Times article where it was slammed as being AI generated. They ran it through an AI detection algorithm that came out and said it was 75% AI generated. And so the book was pulled. One of the first persons to call this out was, I believe it was YouTuber Frankie Shelf, who basically raked the thing over the coals. God, I hope he never reads one of my books if that's what he does to an author. Jesus. Raked it over the coals and accused it of being AI slop. You had the reporter on, I believe it was New York Post, said that they ran it through software that they trusted. It came out it was AI slop. So she responded, I believe, to Frankie's Shelf saying it was my editor's fault. And I'll get to that in a minute. She said, I didn't use AI. I was struggling to get this thing done. I was working on a busted laptop. I was doing what I can with what I had. A friend said they would edit it. and it came back really different. Okay? On top of that, we have another YouTuber, the Drew Dossier, who's actually done a really drilled down on the story and has shown that the reporting that was done was maybe not really accurate. As a test, she took the same AI detector and handed it a poem she wrote in junior high years before things like ChatGPT existed. And it came back that it was 75% slop. So the story was highlighting that these AI detection softwares was flagging the book when they were prone to give false positives. If you want to know more about this, I would recommend checking out the Drew Dossier. She's done like 2 different stories on this. Alyssa Matesic, I hope I'm getting that right. She covered it on hers as well. And then, of course, there's the original roasting of the book by Frankie Shelf. So definitely check out their pages if you want more detail on the story. I'm just kind of giving a quick overview. The reason I'm bringing this up is, of course, AI is once again becoming an issue with indie authors. Now, I myself have actually did a whole podcast where I discuss what I think is legit uses for AI software. The first thing you cannot do is use it as a ghostwriter. Okay, it cannot write the book for you. Okay, you can have it help you with research, although take it with a grain of salt, because AI engines will hallucinate about a quarter of the time. I actually saw an interesting paper about this. It was like, why do they hallucinate? And I think they got it down to about a third of the time. Maybe 20, 30, 25, sorry, not a third, like maybe about 20% of the time, or maybe even 18, but they're still hallucinating like 1 out of 5 times. And the reason why is because the learning language model is rewarded for coming up with an answer that sounds like it's English. In other words, if you ask it, what is the capital of California? And it came out with an answer, bleep, blorp, Sacramento, that gets a lower score than the capital of California is Houston, right? One sounds like English, the other sounds like gobbledygook. But the one that sounded like gobbledygook actually had the right answer. So one of the things the paper was suggesting is that these learning language models need to have 2 scores. One for sounding like you're talking in a real human language, and the other for actually having the right answer. But according to the paper, that's why they hallucinate. They're not rewarded for the right answer as much as they're rewarded for giving an answer that sounds like the right answer. In other words, just the ability to talk in normal human language is more important than actually delivering accuracy. So if you use it for research, take that with a grain of salt. It's very, 1 out of 5 times it's going to be wrong. It's just going to make shit up, okay? You can use it as an editor. Now, again, this gal said that she used a friend to edit it, and it came back completely different. That, to me, is not editing. That's a ghostwriter at that point. When I hand my stuff to a real editor, right, and I use AI, I use Grammarly as a first pass. Now I am running my stuff through things like ChatGPT. But then I hand it to a real person because I don't trust AI. I did that in my very first book, right? When I did the last write, I'm like, oh, I'll just run it through Grammarly. It'll be all nice and clean, and I'll be correct. And it was still loaded with errors, right? I learned the hard way. I cannot trust a computer to do something that is intrinsically a human job. And AI is way, way better than Grammarly, right? But I still find it hallucinating. I've loaded my work up to Claude and say, tell me what you think about it. How's everything? And it's like, oh, you got this thing that you didn't do. I'm like, no, I did that in chapter 13. Oh my goodness, you're right. I was wrong. It's like, you shouldn't be wrong. That's why I'm using you. Right? So I don't trust the AI. It's a useful tool. I'll run it through. I'll say, check for continuity errors, check for grammar problems, give me your opinion. That's fine. I'll use it as a beta reader. But in the end of the day, it's still my book. And when I hand it to a professional editor and they come and they redline through the whole thing, which after going through AI and Grammarly and everything like that, and it's still being redlined, again, tells you how unreliable these things are as a final product, right? I'm just trying to get the low-hanging fruit before I hang it to an editor so the editor doesn't think I'm a complete idiot. But when it comes back from the editor and it's all redlined up, I'll go through his copy and my copy, and I'll go through line by line and make the changes. Because sometimes the changes the editor makes, I disagree with. Now, when I did Fear and the Baby Eater, I went with Liam Ford. He is a great editor, and I pay a lot of money for that. And I agree with him like 95% of the time. It's like, even if there's are you sure that's right? Well, Liam says it's correct, so I'm going to go with what Liam says. So I trust Liam a lot. But it's not Liam's book. It's my book. And there are times when he will mark something and I'll say, okay, I get what you're saying. You're correct, but I need this because of X, Y, or Z. Right? Like, it may not be necessary, but I feel like I need it for a certain emotional point that I'm trying to make, or, it may be redundant, but that redundancy is part of some message I'm trying to say, or whatever the excuse is, right? So in the end of the day, it's still my book and it's still my responsibility. So this excuse that this author had, that my friend edited it and I got it back and it was very different, that was still her choice to run with that. And she's kind of done a mea culpa. She says, it was my bad. I should have gone through it. Yeah, you should have. Right? That is the one part of the story where I'm not very sympathetic to this author. There's an old Navy adage. Authority can be delegated, responsibility cannot. She delegated authority on this book to her friend, but the responsibility was still hers. I mean, again, it's her book. Nobody's going to care about it more than her. Right? When I'm sending it to the editors, I have editors that do great jobs. But they're still my book. Right? I mean, you can have your child, take your child to daycare. It can be the best daycare in the world. They can be the best daycare providers in the world. But in the end of the day, it's still your kid. It's not theirs. Right? So there's just a certain amount that you just can't hand off. Otherwise, it's just not your book anymore. You've given up for adoption, to continue the metaphor. What does upset me about the story is, first of all, like here on the In the Author Showcase, we don't bring a bad book on here. If I had gotten this book and I did not like it, I would not have ever brought it up on the podcast. I never read it as far as anybody was concerned, right? Because whether she used AI or not, whether she is a good author or not, she's trying to do something. And at some point, she actually was succeeding, right? She had so much traction that a professional publisher took her on, which for a lot of us in the indie author community, that's sort of the dream. That's like you're out there playing on your neighborhood softball team, and then you just got picked up to play in the majors, right? And then her reputation gets trashed in the court of public opinion, saying it's all AI slop. And the tools used to determine that it's AI slop are in of themselves AI and unreliable. So I don't know if she used AI or not. Maybe she's just a bad writer. Maybe she's a good writer, and her friend ruined the book, and she dropped the ball and didn't catch it, which is what she's claiming. I don't know. I don't know what the truth is. What I do know is I get really nervous when there's this jump on the bandwagon to try people in the court of public opinion without all the facts in. That's when I start getting nervous, because it can happen to any of us, right? What if somebody accuses me of using AI slop in my book, right? Now, I've been very open about how I use AI, right? I don't use AI to write the book. I write the book, then I hand it to AI, and I say, give me your opinion, check for errors, and then that's just a step as I hand it off to a real person, right? It's not generating. I'm not saying write book for me and have it spit it all out. That's not what happens. Sometimes I will have it write a scene if I have writer's block, and I'll say, okay, here's what I want happen in the scene. How would you do it? I don't use what the AI generates, because what the AI generates is usually really, really bad, right? I just use it to try to get the gears going, and so I can start thinking, because it a lot of times it's hard to come up with something new, but it's a lot easier to criticize something that's bad. Well, I would have done it this way. That's great. AI, how would you write the scene? I would have a duck come in. Well, ducks are horrible. Ducks are stupid. You know what would be better than a duck? Ooh, I got an idea now. And I start writing, right? That to me is what it's useful for. And I know some authors that use AI more heavily, and I get a little concerned. I know other authors that are just like, hell no. We actually interviewed Josh Spiro the other day, and he's like, there's no AI in my stuff. And it's like, well, I use AI sometimes when I'm doing marketing. Like, oh, well, sometimes when we're doing marketing. I was watching this YouTuber, Screen Crush, where they were talking about AI generated video. And, oh, it's horrible. You should never use AI generated video. It's all horrible stuff. I use generative fill when I want to do Photoshop. Oh, that's wonderful. That's fantastic. But that's different, right? It seems like whenever there's these little carve-outs for approved uses when it comes to AI. I think we can all agree we don't want AI slop. We don't want somebody sitting on a computer with ChatGPT saying, write novel, and have it spit out and goes on Amazon and displaces an indie author who's actually spending a year or 2 years trying to craft a book manually. I think that's one reason why we get pissed off. But we also don't want to become zealots and say all AI is bad when, as I've said, I think it has its place. I think it can be used responsibly. And again, I'm stating my opinion on the matter, and I've stated it before. But what I really get nervous about is this whole bandwagoning thing, how this became a thing. And this woman's reputation is in tatters right now. And according to some people, like I said, if you go through like the Drew dossier, she didn't rip apart the author. She ripped apart the reporter and the process that he used to determine it was AI slop, where she disproved that. So be very, very careful when you hear something on YouTube saying, oh, this is AI slop, or, this I don't know, book was written by Martians, whatever the hell the thing comes out. Public opinion and truth are not always the same thing. So you need to be guarded and you need to be careful. Because next time it could be you. So let's get on to this week's showcase. We have The Light at the End by Craig Spector and John Skip. This, I think, was one of the better books that I have listened to so far this year. Like, I think this is contender for Book of the Year, personally. We're about a quarter of the way through the year. This was probably the best book I've read in the first quarter. Let's put it that way. This is a good old-fashioned vampire story with a bit of a twist. This story takes place, let me try this again. This is a good old-fashioned vampire story with a little bit of a twist. This takes place in the subways in New York in 1986. There's an inciting incident where a vampire basically does what vampires do and basically kills off a trainload of people and sires one of the victims, and this guy, Rudy, becomes the vampire in question in the story. And we have like a bunch of bike messengers who are already used to coordinating with each other to move packages around, teaming up to track down and stop the vampire. I thought it was very well written. I thought some of the takes on how vampirism actually works was kind of cool. Like it was more gory. Like usually when they turn into the vampire, they turn very beautiful and everything like that. There were parts of the story where these vampires were mangled and they sort of stayed mangled, and I'm like, I kind of like that, right? They just kind of stay undead and everything like that. It was it got very visceral in places, right? This vampire Rudy was not holding back. The one nitpick I have, and this really is a nitpick because it again, great book, was the original vampire that started this, that turned Rudy, was Dracula. And I luckily Dracula is not a major part of the book, right? He starts the whole mess as Rudy's sire. He kind of checks up on him once in a while. And when Rudy's getting a little bit too big for his britches, he kind of got, no, I'm the main man. Behave. And then I don't want to spoil the end, but he does kind of instigate things at the end, right? He's like, okay, I need to do something here because this is getting out of my control. I've had enough of this. I'm going to get involved. But he doesn't do much other than start off the book and sire Rudy. So that's a good part. But I mean, again, if you're doing a vampire book, does it have to be the vampire all the time? Like Lost Boys was fantastic. Dracula wasn't in it. You know, you don't need the Dracula all the time, right? To me, that was the one part I was like, oh, come on. Luckily, it's a minor part. It doesn't really detract from the book, really, other than the fact that you're like, seriously, Dracula? You know, the book is fantastic. I just think it would have been a little bit better if instead of Dracula, it was just old vampire Vermeer or something. I don't know. You know, just that's my only gripe, my only nitpick. The rest of the book I thought was fantastic. Again, it's got that 80s feel to it. Like, you know, they don't have cell phones. They can't coordinate with cell phones because they don't really exist yet. So they're handing out pagers to each other and using payphones. Again, kids, Google that. So, I mean, yeah, it really kind of took me back to that age. And which I did, because, I mean, again, I'm 54. I lived through the 80s. I remember what it was like. Vampires in New York was just really cool concept. Hiding in abandoned subway stations and trying to track him down when he's jumping trains and everything like that. I thought it was fantastic. If you're into a really good horror novel, if you're a big fan of vampires, The Light at the End is definitely up your alley. This is probably one of the better books I've read so far this year. So that's the showcase. Let me know what you think. Remember, if you want to support the podcast, you can go to shopspectralink.com, where you can buy any of our books from us. You can also buy our books from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Audible, iTunes. You can get your Indie Author Showcase merch. We have t-shirts, mugs, beach blankets, because, hey, beach towels. Summer's coming up. What's better than kicking out on the beach on your Indie Author Showcase beach towel? I'm telling you. You're in for it. And remember, when you buy anything on our website, the shipping is already free. It's calculated already in the price. So no shipping costs. What you pay for is what you pay for. We also have our Patreon, patreon.podbean.com/Indie Author Showcase. If you want to be a patron of the show and help us maintain the show. And if you want to meet me in person, my next convention is going to be Monsterpalooza in May, where you can meet me. And if you already have a copy of my book, bring it in. I'll autograph it. Otherwise, you can buy one for me there at the booth, and I am more than happy to autograph it for you. Now, remember, if you're seeing a clip of this on, say, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, that's a clip of the bigger podcast, right? If you're seeing a clip of me on social media, go to the Indie Author Showcase. You can find us on Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, or pretty much look for us wherever you get your podcasts. So I will see you all then. And remember to like and subscribe, so that way you can find us again when we come back next week. And until then, keep on reading.